Right, guys, so the way that we're going to do this, and apologies if it doesn't work initially, but we'll find a way around it, is you guys have got a couple of ways to ask questions. Now, I can unmute you, or you can simply type a question. I think you've got either a speech bubble or a question mark. So if you'd like to ask it live, there's a way that you can put your hand up. Apologies, it's like being at school, but you put your hand up and I can see that. And then I can unmute you, and then yeah, feel free to ask some questions on that. Alternatively, if you'd rather not do any of the speaking, you can ask questions by typing in. So there's plenty of ways to do that. So first of all, we'll go to the questions that have been written out so far. And also, as I say, I'm going to get some of our brokers to ask their frequently asked questions as well. So as I say, guys, you can either write the questions down if you feel more comfortable to do that, or you can put your hand up and I will unmute you, and then you can ask a question that way, as long as you're connected through the audio side. And of course, everyone will be able to hear what that question is. So what I'll do is let's go to the questions first that have come through. Minesh, sorry, mate. No, there isn't any handout notes. We can say chat personally after, or have a catch up. But don't forget, these are all recorded. So should you want this after, no problem at all. Okay, so another question that came up was, is this still a good time to buy property? Well, do you know what? We believe so. Is it as good as it was 5-6 years ago? No. But we still believe it is a good time to purchase property. However, history will only judge us in a few years' time to say, actually, was that a great time or not? Personally, and again, I repeat this time and time again, is we always hark back to the fundamentals. And this is any market, really. It doesn't matter what market you're looking at, whether it's the stock market or the property market. It's all about the fundamentals. So, for example, there's a number of companies on the stock market who have drifted in price, but actually they're probably making as good money as ever. If you take certain companies like the supermarkets, well, supermarkets aren't going to stop making money due to the disruption that we're seeing. So even though they've probably drifted, well, that's probably because the market as a whole has drifted. So I always personally look at the fundamentals of anything, and I think that the fundamentals of the property market are still there. The main reason why the property market always drifts is pretty much affordability. There's also taxation, legislation, but affordability. Now, banks have got a bit of sorting out to do. I've spoke to some mortgage brokers over the last week, pretty much daily, because things are changing daily. So first of all, Halifax said it was withdrawing all mortgages, any loan to value below 40%. And now they've turned the tide on that. But the main reason why a lot of the banks were doing that is a lot of people went on this 3-month holiday. So this 3-month holiday that they had to give if you requested it, the whole staff were just taken up by giving 3-month holidays. So essentially they stopped everything. Normality is starting to return. But a lot of people think that the market can just fall and just drop. Although that there will be a slowdown of sales, just simply because people can't get out and view, people can't get out to put their house on the market won't drop. If people aren't making offers because they can't actually get out and make an offer, then the market won't drop, just the same as it won't go up either. But what my personal opinion is, once this disruption ends, which it will come to an end, it's a short-term disruption. It's not like 2008, 2009, where we had major liquidity problems and banks didn't have money to lend. They were being bailed out. It's not that kind of time. We're in a time when it's disruption to our personal lives. And again, as long as the affordability is there, then I still think that the property market will go up. So is it a good time to buy? I don't think it's a better time than any normal time. I think without this disruption, I would still say it's a good time to buy property. I don't think it's made it a better time. I don't think it's made it a worse time. But also, we've got to judge property over a longer term. We don't sort of look back in 6 months and say, oh, I could have made another 1% there or 2%. You've got to judge it 5-10 years down the line. Property is a longer term product. Biggest question relates to whether the developer of St Anne's can weather a recession or worst case depression. Yeah, again, let's go worst case. Let's say that we head into a depression. Well, a depression comes about where there's no money, there's no liquidity, there's no lending, and that's not the case. But let's say it did. Let's say that everything was turned on its head. they've got everything in place in terms of a signed agreement for the lending facility that they can't retract. A bank can't pull that lending facility because they've started to lend. Can they weather it? Yes, because that's all been taken into consideration. Also, another important factor, which we were asked by a client yesterday, is do they develop? Do they have their own team that they're constantly having to outlay for? And the answer is no. And that's the beauty of when you have a developer who outsources the construction. What they actually don't have is a team that they're constantly paying for. That's why a lot of the big developers who are off-site struggle a lot of the time, because they're constantly paying wages to sales staff, bricklayers, plasterers, electricians, plumbers. These are staff that work directly for the company, so they are still earning their wage. Whereas a lot of developers who are developing, but not on the scale as someone like Taylor Woodrow or Countrywide and places like that, companies like that, they will outsource the construction. So for them, nothing's changed. They don't have any overheads. They're not paying for staff. So yeah, they've got the loan facility. All that will happen is they're going to be on site slightly later, because the delivery of materials and the delivery of things, whether it be things like diggers, cranes, things like that, are obviously not forthcoming. So they will start probably. They're looking now in around about 6 to 7 weeks' time, as long as everything gets back to normal. So worst case is going to be the delay side of things. Hi Chris, could you elaborate if there's a potential for a global depression and or recession and likely impact on properties? Okay, so if again, like I said, so depression or recession is when money is not about. Now, it's not just a case about unemployment. A lot of people say, well, if people are unemployed, there's not enough money. The main thing is liquidity. So if there's a lack of liquidity, if people can't borrow and if people can't get mortgages, or mortgage rates go sky high, therefore there's a huge issue with people having affordability, then 100% there will be a recession or depression. Now, a recession I don't worry too much about, because typically a recession is judged as X amount of months in negative. So to me, a depression is a major thing. People look back and say 2008 to 9 was a depression. I don't think that we had years and years of depression. Within sort of 18 months, we were seeing some light at the end of a tunnel. But of course, let's talk about a depression. Let's talk about something like what happened in the late 20s. If something like that happens, then 100% we are going to see an impact on property. People will still need to live in properties, so people will still need to rent. So that's a given. You're not going to suddenly see people not renting anymore. Ironically, you see more people rent in times of hardship, depression, and recessions than you do in times when the affordability is there. Because when the affordability is there, people will go and buy. So ironically, in times of depression and recession, more people will actually be driven to rent. So although it might have an effect on the actual prices of property if we were in a depression, I don't think we're going to see an impact on the occupancy rates in terms of the rental side of things. So for all you landlords out there who currently hold or are looking to hold, I think the occupancy rates are going to be solid regardless. The occupancy rates increase in negative times because people don't have the affordability to go and buy. But of course, we may see a run on property prices. Again, I don't think it will happen, because I don't think we're at that stage, because liquidities are there. We've seen it was advertised as a 2 trillion stimulus, but actually, if you look deeper, what they're actually offering is more closer to 6, which is insane. The kind of money that they're offering. So there's a lot of liquidity, a lot of money is being made available to get through this. And as I say, I think it's a short-term disruption. So someone's got their hands up. Callum. So Callum, I'm going to try and unmute you. Apologies if this doesn't work, buddy. But let's try it. But Callum, over to you.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Hi, Callum. Yeah.
Hi, Chris. We spoke about this before, but I'm aware that it wasn't agreed with the solicitors. It was a bit slow at the start because the solicitors were speaking to the developers regarding on if it didn't go ahead, then we'd get 10% of their money back. But I think that the solicitors were talking to the developers to add an extra 15% on it. Is that still what's the case on that?
Callum, correct me if I'm wrong on the question. Just to give everyone background, this is, you're talking about St Anne's project in Liverpool. Callum, what you're saying is the 25% down. So you've got the 10% protected, and the other 15%. I didn't quite understand the last part of the question. Apologies.
I believe that the solicitors were. I thought it was going slow ahead because the solicitors were trying to speak to the developers, agreeing that it was an extra 15% protection.
Okay, understood. Understood. No probs. Right. So just let you know what I'll do now, Callum. I'll put the hand down. I've got this thing where I can put the hand down. But if you want to ask something in relation to my answer, just put it back up again, buddy. So if I do that, lower the hand. Right. So what Callum's saying is that on the majority of projects there that take 25%, 10% is protected. Either is held in what's called stakeholder, so that means it's held in some form of escrow, or it's released to the developer, but the developer has got some form of NHBC certificate in place which protects the 10%. So that's there. So that 10% protection there. They can use the other 15%. What the in the best case scenario, what the solicitors always push for, even though 99 times out of 100 they don't get it, but what they basically push for is an extra 15% insurance. Now, just to let you know, Callum, they haven't got that insurance yet, but they are inquiring about the insurance. What they have to weigh up, to be brutally honest, is the cost of that insurance. So, give you an example, you're probably looking at something like £300,000 to £400,000 for an NHBC certificate, and you may be looking at another £400,000 or £500,000 potentially for the insurance side of things. So what they'll have to weigh up is, well, actually, if that's costing me an extra 500,000 and I've got X amount of units, the chances are they'll put the price up of the units. That's how they'll do it, because they've already worked out their profit and loss. So at the moment, we've got the 10% is covered, 15% can get released. But that's something that, again, for me, it makes it easier for the sales side. If I can turn around and say you've got 25% protected, it makes it far easier. So at the moment, Callum, no, they don't have that, but it is something that I'm pushing. I put them a couple of contacts their way, and they're just waiting for quotes back. But again, I'll keep you posted on that. So let's go back to the written questions, guys. What is the impact of the pandemic on the real estate market in terms of price and rent? Well, like I say, in regards to prices, we've not seen anything too dissimilar. You can't, for example, if you've got, let's say you've got a £500,000 property, well, it doesn't matter what you lower it to. No one can get in and view it and get in and see the property. No one's going to buy it. So if you've got a £500,000 property and you think, well, I want to sell this, well, it doesn't matter if you lower it to 450. You're probably still going to have no takers because no one can actually go in and see it. Unless you go ridiculous and knock 200,000 off it and then someone goes and buys it without even viewing. But again, look, let's be realistic, it's not going to happen. So I think the impact is actually just a slowdown, not a decrease in prices. It's just the fact that, you know, Zoopla reported that about 40% slowdown. I think you're probably looking at more like 80% or 90% in terms of actual transactions not going through, because the reality, all transactions that have taken place will go through. There's going to be a few issues in terms of maneuverability, in terms of you know, getting people to come out and pick up your stuff, removal vans and things like that. So that's going to be issues. But also at the moment, if no one can go and view a property, and we're talking about the residential market here, so if no one can go and view a property in the residential market, then people aren't going to be buying. People are just going to be sat indoors, not doing anything. So the residential market, I see that suffering an 80 to 90% slowdown. Now, what I do then see is once the chocks away, so to speak, then suddenly we'll have a huge increase in demand, a huge increase in people wanting to move. Because what we see over times like Christmas time, when people are in their houses, a lot of the time they realise the things that are wrong with their house. So when you sort of go to work, come back and you sleep, then you go to work again, people don't take much notice. But when you actually are in your house a lot of the time, the reason why Boxing Day you have a surge in people looking at Rightmove and Zoopla, that's their record day, by the way, in terms of viewings on those websites, Boxing Day, is because people are just simply realising, actually, my house isn't big enough and family, or my house needs work doing to it, so they look at places to go. So I think that people will still be viewing now on Rightmove and Zoopla, but actually going to round people's houses. And who would you call? You've got estate agents who won't go and do valuations and won't go and do viewings. So I think there'll be a slowdown in terms of the residential market. In terms of the price of the rent, that's not going to change either. People aren't going to suddenly put up the rent during these times. It would be immoral to start to do something like that, and I don't think you'll see any of that. And I just think things will carry on once the disruption ends. In terms of prices of investment property, well, if you've got a decent developer and they're a cash-rich developer, which we look to deal with, they won't be phased by it. It doesn't matter whether they sell them now or in 5 months' time. So I don't see that there's going to be any issue. To me, the fact that they've cut interest rates and they've cut emergency interest rates, banks will eventually have to feed that money through. Banks still have to make money as well, and that's how they make the money. The disparity, obviously, between what the savings rates are and what the mortgage rates are, that's one of their facilities of making money. And the reality is they have to lend. So again, I really don't think that we're going to see a dramatic decrease. Okay, let's get to the next one. Why are most lenders withdrawing products or withdrawing lending completely? Again, it's something that when I spoke to them, they said it's short term. They've said initially it's staff shortages for actually doing the work, doing the paperwork. They said that the majority of paperwork that they've got at the moment is people wanting to take mortgage holidays. And I've spoken to a lot of people that couldn't afford the mortgage, and they're just saying, well, I'm going to take it anyway, just because I can. So I think that's put a lot of pressure on staff and time that they have. So I think that's the first thing. I think also another thing is banks have to assess the situation. So they've not totally withdrawn products; they've just withdrawn certain type of products. So at the moment, so Halifax, the last I heard, they had withdrawn the 25% to 75% LTV. It was 40% or more, but they were due to come back by the end of this week. So I'm due to have a catch up with mortgage brokers tomorrow in regards to that. So it's changing daily. We're in unprecedented times. It's something that none of us have been through before. And so what I think banks have done is right, we need to concentrate on the mortgage holidays first. They're starting to calm down now, and then they can start to get back to a bit of normality. But as I say, it's not as if they're withdrawing and you're not going to be able to ever get a mortgage again. As I say, it's disruption. And the reality is most people, not all, but most people aren't getting mortgages now because you can't even do a valuation. So if you can't get into somewhere to value, then developers and the person that you're buying the property from, they're just going to have to understand that exchanges and completions are going to have to take a little bit longer. Will house prices drop significantly when thinking about selling? I don't know what you mean by when thinking about selling. Do you mean when's the best time to sell on that, Andre? Again, I don't think they're going to drop significantly. I genuinely don't. We're not in 2008 times. What I would say is if you think within the next 6 months you're going to need money or you're retiring, then of course, then maybe it is a good time to sell. But most people, you don't play the property market like you play the stock market. You can get in and out of the stock market within hours and days and make or lose a lot of money. However, in regards to the property market, it doesn't work like that. If you've got to look at what your goal is, and if your goal is medium to long term, whether that be retirement, and a lot of people say their goal is making money. It's as simple as that. But that's a product of, there's something else that's your end goal. It may be your children, it may be your retirement, it may be a safety net. Some people have jobs which they're contracted, so it might be sort of 6 months contracts at a time. So they want something a bit more long term for when they don't have that 6-month contract. So you have to look at what your goal is. So for example, let's say that you've got a long term goal to retire in 10 years time. Well, don't try and play the property market. It doesn't matter whether it dips 10%, 15%, goes up 10%, 15%. The fluctuations are irrelevant. What you've got to look at is if you're doing this to keep hold of your money and earn income, then just carry on earning your income. And I think also a lot of people have to look at, well, if you have a property that's giving you 6% for argument's sake, and you sell it and you think, oh, well, great. Let's say the property market dipped by 6%, for argument's sake, over the next year. Well, you've not benefited because where have you put your money? The chances are you put your money in a bank, and banks are going to go to negative rates. The reality is the banks will soon start charging you to have money in the account. So you've got £100,000 in the account. They'll probably take £500 out a year just to even have that money in there. That's the way that things look that they're starting to go. There are already some countries that are doing negative interest rates, and I'm guessing it probably is going to come here in the not too distant future. So what you've got to look at is if you're getting 5-6% a year on your property, just in terms of your income, well, what are you going to do without that money? So you might sell it and think, well, I've saved a little bit, but the reality is that you haven't, because you've lost it by just leaving it in a bank. And as I say right from the beginning, I just don't think that the prices are going to dip anyway. So let's go to Jack. So Jack's a sales director here. Jack, I'm going to try and unmute you if I can find you in the list. So Jack, I'm sure you get a lot of questions from clients and people you speak to. So Jack, what's one of the frequent questions that you get? I've just unmuted you, by the way, Jack, if you can hear. Okay, looks like Jack can't. Okay, Jack can't speak. Right, let's go to one of the other guys. So Janice. So Janice is one of the brokers here. Janice, I'm going to try and unmute you. Can you hear me all right? Guys, I think I might just stick to the written form of questions, as Janice can't hear me either. I've got one from Sean. So Sean's one of our brokers. So one of the questions he gets, he's put now, is it risky now buying off plan? Yeah, okay, good question. I don't think it's any riskier or safer buying now, or as it was before. Again, if there were liquidity problems, I would say yes. You probably want to get something wrapped up and get it in the bag before you can before thinking about some off plan stuff. But I'd say no, I don't think so. Always there's a risk with off plan. Whatever anyone says, you're going to have a lot of agents out there saying no, off plan's absolutely safe, no problem at all. It's not, guys. Off plan, you are buying the prospect of something being built, and there's always instances where that's something that's being built slows down or doesn't get built at all. So it's always got to ask. You always got to work with those, between those parameters. So importantly, what we do is we look at things like their affordability. We look at things like liquidity rates. We look at things like who's involved in the scheme, and also, are they selling it to residential clients as well? One big thing that, again, we're always learning as well. One big thing we've learned over the years is, as mortgage brokers change, basically they turn around and now they're saying, well, look, what they're looking for is more people that are residential in the development. So we look for things that are going to have at least 40-50% plus residential clients. That's a big thing as well. We also look to ensure that and mortgage brokers have done their checks prior to us even releasing the development. So for example, if you've got a 1960s block that's been converted, it might look fantastic on the face of it, but a lot of the time you might have a mortgage broker who says, do you know what, you're probably not going to get a mortgage on that due to the way it was built. Or if you're above some commercial premises, and that commercial premises happens to be a pub, potentially you're going to have issues there. So all these things we look at before. So that's something that we take into consideration. So no, I don't think I say it's any riskier than it was a month ago in terms of buying off plan. Jack, can you hear us, Jack?
Yeah, can you hear me now, guys?
Yep, we can. So Jack, what's something that you get, buddy, your end?
A lot of the time, well, one of the sort of frequently asked questions is it better to buy in sort of personal name and a company name? That's quite a frequent one, especially given the tax changes, stamp duty changes, all that sort of thing. So we get that quite a lot.
Okay, great. So yeah, good point. We always kind of a bit evasive on this because we're not qualified accountants. We don't pretend to be. Typically, a hard and fast rule is if you're looking to do multiple properties, then yes, it probably does become more favourable to buy it in a company name. If you're not, then it's probably better to stick with a personal name. Also, it depends on if you're going to get a mortgage, because mortgages tend to be more expensive percentage-wise in a company. But we always say, look, everyone's personal circumstances are different in terms of what tax bracket you're in, whether you're UK-based, overseas-based. So there's so many variables to take into consideration that we do like to sort of pass you on, not as if we're passing the buck here, but pass you on to an accountant who will be able to give you the exact best answer that they can. As I say, typically a hard and fast rule they say is if you're looking to buy multiple, then yes, probably for taxation reasons, it's better buying a company. But then there's other things as well. So for example, if you've got a property that you can class as a holiday let because you're doing short-term lets, then actually you get all those benefits. Things like your furniture you can offset, which you can't do wear and tear on properties now. So there are a number of other advantages. If you've got a holiday let, then suddenly you might think, well, actually it's not worth setting up a limited company. So as I say, typically that's a hard and fast rule, but as I say, we always refer you to your accountant or some form of accountant, as they will be able to give you a more precise detail on your particular circumstances. Okay, one of the other brokers here, Shanice, she's got a hand up. Shanice, I'm going to try and unmute you. Let's see if that works. So Shanice, it's not coming up. Oh yeah, Shanice, have we got you? No,
Hello.
Oh, Shanice, hi.
Hi, Chris, and hi, everyone. I hope everyone's all well and staying safe during this crazy time. But one of the questions that I get quite frequently asked, Chris, is what returns can I expect to see? And just to obviously elaborate on that a little bit, we obviously do the short-term lets and the 12-month AST as well. So obviously with the current climate, how would the short-term lets be affected? And can my clients switch to the AST should they wish to do so?
Yeah, good question. Well, look, that's the beauty of AST. Thanks, Shanice. That's the beauty of AST and short-term lets is with a short-term let, you can flip within days. If you suddenly decide, now don't get me wrong, if you've got bookings coming up the next weekend, you can't get someone in there, otherwise they can have a surprise coming in when the short-term letters come in. But let's be realistic. You know, the reason why you would typically want to go to an AST over a short-term let is because you don't have any bookings coming up. Now we can easily flip, as I say, overnight from a short-term let to an AST. That's the beauty of it. You're not tied into some long-term contract that you can't get out of. That's not the way we work. So yes, you can easily flip from one to another. To answer your second question in terms of what's it like at the moment, well, look, the realistic answer is that short-term lets aren't happening. Short-term lets are something that you need when there are events happening, whether it be sports events, entertainment events. So typically, the short-term let market has struggled. And again, any agent that tells you otherwise is not giving the correct information. So, but going back to what I said at the beginning, this is a disruption. It's not a permanent thing. It's not something that we're going to see in 5 years' time and think, blimey, you know, we're still on lockdown. It can't keep going on. So there are certain countries that seem to be improving with a lockdown. I do think we're going to extend the lockdown. I think that you know, after Easter here, they will extend that lockdown. For me, it's the lockdown isn't about, you know, stopping people getting the virus. For me, the lockdown is to give them more time to get prepared for when people do get the virus, because I think that it's inevitable. So I think that once they're prepped, then they can start to get people going back to work. But as I say, at the moment, yeah, if you're coming up to completion, which I know some of our clients are, they're coming up to completion, and a few of them wanted to do short-term lets. But I think it's an ideal opportunity to do 6-month lets. Get someone in for 6 months. Also, a lot of renters will really appreciate that opportunity because they might not want to commit to 12 months. So they might think, you know what, 6 months, fully furnished. I don't have to go and buy furniture because they can't anyway. So the fact is you've got fully furnished property there. So they'll really appreciate the 6-month side as well. Get the money coming in, and then we can decide in 6 months or 3 months, whatever it wants to be, to flip to the short term if you want. But we can flip back. If the developer does not complete the building project, how much of the 25% do we lose? Good question. So if you put down 25% and you've got 10% protected, you've got the issue with you've got 15% of your money lose. So for example, you've got £100,000 property, you put £25,000 down, £10,000 protected. So you've got the worst case scenario is 15% is a loss. So that always has to be thought about. But as I say, most developers won't do insurance on the other 15%. The ones that we're doing, we're asking them to. It probably will put the prices up for future buyers. But again, if they've got extra insurance on that, fantastic. However, the fact that the developers that we use have the funding in place means that the risk is lowered. there are a lot of developers out there who use your money to build. So they'll be like, 25% now, 15% after 6 months, another 15% after on roof or things like that. They're using your money to build. The reality is that the lender has already granted them whatever it is, I think 10 or 11 million pounds. The lender is going to do far more due diligence than any of us can do, because they just simply have the manpower and the financials to do that. They're not going to risk 10, 11 million pounds if they think that the developer has not been going to build. So they're in far deeper than any individual client. And as I say, if they're comfortable to lend, everything's going to be absolutely fine. But yeah, on a personal note, typically 10% safe, 15%. There's always that implication. Will the lockdown affect the expected completion dates for off-plan projects in construction? Depends on where they are in their construction, if I'm honest. So people that can still get on site, there are some developments that are in the latter part of construction, so therefore no materials need to be used. It's just purchased, sorry. Therefore, it's just, for example, all the materials are on site, and you might just have people doing what's called second fixes. So second fix electricians. So you've got your first fix is where they put all the wires in the back of the wall. Plumbing first fix is where they put the pipes in the back of the wall. Second fix is where they do the plates that we see, like your electric plates. Or second fix for the plumbers is where they do they put taps on. As long as the materials are on site and they're doing second fix electric, plumbing, and of course painters on site, no reason why they shouldn't finish and hit expected completion date. Where you will see issues is on building materials that aren't being delivered or taking extra long time to be delivered. So even with some projects that I'm doing, you go to some of the big building sites locally to me, and they're closed. They're not delivering. And what they're saying is only for essential works, and essential works are hospitals, prisons, places like that. So what they're basically saying is, if you're in essential work or if you're an essential building, that they will deliver. But if you're not, they won't. So I would say that will it affect certain things coming up? If you're about to complete, no, I don't. I think most of the materials should be on site. If you're right in the middle of it, yeah, it will. I believe that you're probably looking at a good 2 to 3 months delay, just simply because even if this ends at the end of April, it's going to take time to get things back going again. But also, what I would say as well is a lot of the projects that we give, we add probably 3 to 6 months on most of them anyway. When we're advising clients and they ask what the completion date is, we always add minimum of 3-4 months on, because the reality is we know that things come up. Okay, we don't expect things like this to come up, but we know that things come up. So what we do is we add it on. So for example, with St Anne's, we've said end of 2021. Well, the developer was telling us summer 2021. So we've added plenty of time on. So I don't think that that's going to be delayed unless the lockdown continues a little bit longer. In the current climate, do you think flipping is a better option than completion in the near future? If yes, what's the minimum profit we should aim for? No, I don't think. Well, there's two types of flipping. So there's short-term flipping where you're buying, doing something up and then flipping on. And there's flipping where you're buying off plan and then maybe waiting sort of 8 to 12 months till close to completion and then flipping. If you're looking at short-term flipping, buying, doing something up and flipping it on, then definitely not. I wouldn't do that, because first of all, even in normal times, you'll never beat a builder. You simply won't have the same capacity that a builder can have if you're looking to do up a particular property. But also, who are you going to flip to? If no one's buying, in terms of residential, you're not going to be able to flip to a residential buyer. And it's unlikely that you're going to make profit and flip to an investor, because an investor wants it below market value. If you're looking to do flipping as in buying off plan for 12 months time, 100%, I think that's a great option. But as I say, with the completions, I don't think that you're going to have the pressure put on you to complete. If you physically can't complete on something, then the reality is you can't. I mean, we're in times where solicitors and developers have to understand that you might need to go and do evaluation. And don't get me wrong, people that are dragging their heels and haven't even bothered starting the ball rolling when they're completing 2 weeks ago, different story. But if you've done all you can and you physically can't get in, or your valuer can't get in, no, I think they're going to extend it for you. But also, it's time at the moment when all these mortgages do come back online, I think there are going to be some great deals to be had. So I think as I say, I think there are still numerous ways to make property. I wouldn't short-term flip. You know, I've been in the property market coming close to 20 years. I wouldn't be doing, buying, doing it up and selling it on, because you've got people that are far better than I am at knowing, prices of materials and being able to do it. That you just won't beat a builder. Even going to an auction, you'll never beat a builder. You'll never outbid a builder. They will always be one step ahead. Would it be wise to lower the rent to help tenants retain tenants? Do you know what? Morally, yeah, that's a nice thing to do. Do you have to? No. I think that most people will be fine in terms of their rent. And again, this goes back to what we advise on. We always advise slightly higher end properties, not top end, so your 2 premium. But we've had clients before. They've come to us, for example, Manchester or Liverpool. Let's say Manchester. They've got 250,000, and they said, well, rather than buying a £250,000 property, they want to buy 2 for 100,000 on the outskirts. You go and do that, but the problem is you're going to get tenants who one day may not be able to afford that rent because they're a certain type of tenant. They might not be able to afford the rent. They will be living week to week, month to month. And if you get that type of tenant in, you're going to have occupancy rates which are slightly lower, or where you have hassle with tenants. We tend to want to avoid that. So we hit ourselves in the middle. We're not looking at £500,000 properties in Manchester where then you're outpricing yourself. But around the 250 mark, yeah, absolutely no problem at all. I don't think you'll need to lower the rent. But again, if you're particularly flush and you're the type of person that wants to lower rent morally just to help a tenant out, 100%, I think that it's a nice thing to do, and I've got no doubt it will retain tenants. What parts of the UK would do better than others? Okay, in terms of rent, again, I won't go on buying at the moment, but in terms of rent, you're going to do the affordable parts. If you've got Manchester, if you've got London, sorry, and you've got a property in London where you have to command £2,000 a month just to sort of make your 3-4%, you know, there's going to be times when £2,000 a month, the 24 grand a year just on rent is a lot of money. This is another reason why we promote developments outside of London, because we always look at multiples of people's income. So if you're looking in London and there are certain multiples, the property price is certain multiples of people's income, we know that that's going to be hard to rent on a constant level. You're always going to have rental in London, don't get me wrong, but in times like this, you know, people may think, well, actually, that £2 grand a month is a lot. And this is when people start to take stock of the finances, their life, and think, you know what, am I wasting 24 grand a year on rent? So I always would say go somewhere where rents are affordable. You can get good properties, great price, and affordable rents, whether that be Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield, those kind of places. That's where I would definitely be looking. That's where I personally am buying. Is London still a good place to invest? Again, I think I sort of covered that on the last one. London's London, and if you're looking for a 15-20 year plan, yeah, you're going to be fine. I just still think that there are better places to put your money outside of the capital at the moment. After this, we might see people willing to take a small little drops. Developers who are having to sit on site, so big developers, like I said earlier, big developers who are still paying wages, and they're off site at the moment, still paying wages, then maybe that's the place to go. But I don't think we're going to see anything drastic at all. So I've got on here, there's no doubt in the short term that the market will be at a standstill with void for property and landlords prices dropping inevitably, even if marginally. If the situation was to be short term, I agree we see a sharp bounce back with prices going back to where they were before March or even higher. However, the issue that we're facing is this crisis will take longer. There are government plans to include the possibilities of a lockdown for 12 months plus, or until vaccine or other solutions are found. In the scenario of the carrying on for a longer period, what are your predictions for the property market? Okay, we can't lock down for 12 months. Whatever the Daily Mail reports, you're not going to lock down for 12 months. What do you think? People are not going to work for 12 months? I mean, that would be an absolute, I mean, forget about properties dipping. People will be, you know, jumping off buildings like they did in the 1920s. We cannot have a lockdown for 12 months. It would just be inconceivable. You'll have high streets which will just be non-existent anymore. Even if we come out of it after 12 months, if we lock down for 12 months, it'll probably take a decade to get out of it. So I would think we've got bigger problems than, you know, 5-10% loss in the property market if we lock down for 12 months. Again, they do need to do. I think that the key to this isn't a vaccine, if I'm honest with you. I think, and Jason, I wonder if you could tell me otherwise, because Jason joined pharmaceutical. But I think the key to this is testing. If you test people and there's an antibody and it says that actually you've had it, well, what's stopping those people going back out to work? So I think the issue that the UK are having at the moment is a huge lack of testing. When we compare ourselves to Germany, which I think I saw the figures and I might be wrong here, but I think they were testing something like 100,000 a day, 10,000 or 100,000 a day. I can't remember, so apologies, but it's something insanely higher than what we're doing. But what I would actually say is, no, I don't think, as I say, I do agree with you. If we're on lockdown for 12 months, you know what, we've got bigger issues to face than a small dip in the property market. But look, like you say, only time will tell. I don't see us having void periods for short term, but let's hypothetically go for your 12-month. If we have a 12-month plan and you have a worker, let's say you've got a worker in your property who is works in Costa Coffee or wherever it may be, and they're off work for 12 months, and or they work in a boutique coffee shop which goes bust, then they don't have a job and they can't get a job for 12 months, and of course we're going to have major issues. But yeah, I just can't see that happening, and I just think that papers are making they're reporting things and they're misreporting things that actually is making people a little bit more nervous. The same with Brexit. You know, for example, as soon as Brexit happens, apparently planes aren't going to be able to fly anymore, and you know, the property prices will fall 30% according to newspapers in Brexit, and then it was then clarified actually that won't happen. So yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. What is an IST? Oh no, an AST. Sorry, an AST. It's a assured short hold tenancy. That's your typical 12-month tenancy. So an AST is a typical 12-month tenancy. But let's go back. Someone's got their hand up. So Vicky, I've tried to unmute you. Vicky's one of our brokers here. So she'll give us a question. Vicky, I've tried to unmute you, and I'm guessing that you can't speak at the moment. So Vicky, you might want to. Oh, yep. Vic.
Yeah.
Hi, Vic.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I've got you, Vicky.
Okay. Hi, everyone. A common question that comes up from our clients is, what are the benefits of using Flambard Williams as a company? Okay.
Nice and easy. Well, look, the benefit of using ourselves isn't just the properties that we get. That's the first thing. But we try and get properties that are either below market value or off market, so you won't find these on Rightmove or Zoopla. But it's also the hand holding. We try and hold your hand right the way through the process. We give out our mobile numbers. Doesn't matter you phone us Saturdays, Sundays, you can always get hold of us. The majority of people that invest with us go on to do multiple deals because of the after service that we give. But also the majority of people that invest with us are also first-time buyers, so they want that initial hand holding to help. But there's other companies that are good as well. We're not the only company out there that does this. There are a lot of good companies out there, but we're not a typical estate agent where we simply show you a property, you buy it, we take our commission, and then on you go, you don't hear from them again. So the big advantage is we look to get off-market properties that you won't be able to find yourself, and also the fact that we'll give you a really good after service and hold your hand through the whole process. Am I better off buying something which is off plan or something which is ready now? Again, because I think that this particular disruption at the moment is a short-term. When I say short-term disruption, I'm not talking about days, guys. I know this is going to sort of be, we're still going to be talking about this sort of May, June time, but I'm hoping that by that time we'll start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As I say, if you buy something that's ready now, what I would always say to people is just ensure that the solicitor is aware that if you're buying something that's hasn't got someone in, that you might want to ask for an extended period for completion. If you've got a tenant in it anyway, you want to complete as quick as possible because you'll start getting the money straight away. But if you've got something that's empty, for example, and you're about to buy it and it's empty, I would ask the seller for extended time to complete, because what you don't want to be doing is paying the mortgage off whilst there's no one in it. It's just a waste of money. So if you're buying something that's ready now, I would say if there's someone in it, you complete ASAP as normal because you start getting the money. If there's not, you ask to defer it slightly. But again, I don't think there's going to be much of a difference between off plan and something that's ready now. Hong Kong is in lockdown. Yep, Hong Kong's in lockdown for a couple of months and counting. Yeah, agree. I think every country is going to be slightly different. We saw obviously China. Well, they've said that they've reported missed figures. So again, that's to be seen. But potentially, yes. Potentially, let's say we do as I just said. Let's say it does go on till the end of this month and they reassess. I do think after Easter they're going to extend it. But again, if people still need to live, and I think this is what a lot of people think. Oh well, you know, no one's going to pay for anything anymore. Well, people still need to live, and more so than ever, the people that are in the properties, they're going to have to pay rent. As long as the government can put in place quicker than they are doing now, the following of employees where they're getting 80%, and also I know it's going to be self-employed people are going to be till June, but people will still need to live somewhere. So do I think it's going to go on longer? Yes. Do I think we're in extremely long term for 12 months? No, I don't. Let's have a look. Do you offer a letting service? We do. 2 types of let, as I said, AST and short-term let. But as I say, for short-term lets at the moment, that's something that we're probably going to be placed on hold for at least 3 months whilst this pans out. Do you charge as a company to use your service? There are 2 ways we earn money. Let's take the purchase side, the investment side first of all. We make our money either directly through a developer, so the developer pays us directly. So therefore, the price that you get, let's say it's a £200,000 property that you go and get, the developer pays us, so you don't pay any extra. However, on one at the moment where we've got a £250,000 property, we go and work with the developer, we go and spend a lot of time and effort negotiating, and we get that same property that's on Rightmove now, or has just been sold, I should say, for 250. We get it for 200. We don't get paid by the developer on things like that. So we will charge what's called a finder's fee, which is £2,500. So that's how we make our money. And on the letting side, we do charge to let. So we charge 8% on the normal lets, 12-month lets, which are also called AST. And on the short-term lets, it's 12%. Anyone else got their hand up? I think that's it, guys. Well, look, guys, I appreciate your time, and I know that we're in times where which are unprecedented. But as I say, just to summarise, and as I say, you can feel free to contact me directly, contact any of the brokers. All of the details are on your screen. But as I say, on the whole, I think what we have to look at every time is people still need to live in a property, and I think more than ever there's going to be demand for rental property. Also, I think that in certain areas like the Manchester and Liverpool, where we have student population which is in the midst of being, they don't know what's happening, what's going on next year, I think that we're going to see increased demand. So for me, I'll be straight with you. I've just bought 3 properties. I'm going through the process of buying 3 properties. I'll probably complete on those by the end of the month. I always look at these things long term. And for me, I'm not worried what happens in the next 6, 12 months, year and a half. The reality is that I look back at over 10 years, and I think 10 years ago, what did I buy 10 years ago? Has it done well? What have I bought 5 years ago? Has it done well? And I bought in times like 2007, 2008, just before the crash. And you know what? As long as people make sensible decisions and they're not putting themselves so tight where, for example, if you're buying a property and 1 month of non-occupancy means that you can't afford the mortgage, you shouldn't be buying a property. Same with the stock market. If you're going in to buy something on the stock market and you're putting whatever it is, 40 grand in, and you can't afford to lose that money, shouldn't be investing. That's the reality of it. With property, it's slightly different. Property would never go to zero. But what I would say is what you need to ensure is that the affordability is there. So if you did have a lean month occupancy-wise, but on the whole, I just can't see this going on for as long as some of the more comic book style newspapers are making out. I think if you read between the lines and you look at the scientific papers that have been published, they're all saying, look, the chances are that we're probably going to get this anyway. The chances are that probably a lot of us have had it and don't know about it. For me, I think that testing kicks in sooner rather than later, and I think that then we can start to see where we are with the situation. I had a few more questions come through. What are the additional charges on the properties don't quite understand what you mean about charges. Do you mean our charges there, Callum? So for example, you're saying that things like the rental charge, so the 8% that we charge to rent, or the 12% that we charge for short-term lets, or do you mean things like ground rent, service charge, things like that? Is it possible to obtain an audio? Yeah, of course it is. We will send out, what should actually happen is you should be emailed within the next 24 hours automatically a link to the a recording of this, and it'd be good to sort of, you know, maybe we'll touch base in 3 months and see where we are, and in 12 months to see if we're, because I know obviously you mentioned about the 12 months thing there, so see what's actually going on. So it'd be good to see where we all are. But yeah, within 24 hours you should get a recording of this. What is the payment plan and how many months for an off-plan property? Depends on the property. Typically, if the developer has cash or has a loan facility, then it will be 25% or less. Some will be 50%. I've seen some that are 70%. But again, that's typically where they're using your money to build, which I certainly wouldn't be doing. So there's some out there which are 10% and 90% on completion. Some are slightly higher. So it really all depends on the actual property in question. Ground rent. Okay, so going back to the earlier question, Callum, you were asking what's the extra fees? Ground rent. Ground rent differs per development, so it just depends on the particular development that you get. So yeah, I would say look at the particular development. If you're talking about St Anne's, as I say, check on the email, because I'm pretty sure that we would have sent over all the ground rent, service charge, and things like that. For short-term rent, do you take care of the housekeeping service? Yes, we do. So the housekeeping service is for arranging the service, it's within that 12%, but the service is obviously an extra fee. So, but we arrange all of that for you. We have companies in different cities. So after the client leaves, we arrange for the housekeeping service to go in. What they do is they also change the code on the door. So when the next person goes in, it's a different code to the previous person. But yeah, we take care of all of that side as well. What's the average completion time in months for an off-plan property? Again, it depends on the property. I've had off-plan which has been 4 or 5 months. I've had off-plan which has been 4 years. It depends. If you've got a you know, 60, 70 floor tower in the middle of London, you might be looking at a 3-year build. If you've got something that's you know, 4 or 5 stories, you might be looking at 12 months. So it really depends on the property. Aware cleaners are not included if it was short-term let. Are you aware of cleaning companies in London? Liverpool, sorry. Do you mean, am I aware of cleaning companies in Liverpool? Yeah, we work with them for short-term lets. So yeah, we wouldn't do a short-term let with having all of our ducks in a row and ensuring that we have the necessary maintenance, electricians, plumbers, cleaning, the whole lot. So yeah, we have all those taken care of. Well, as I say, guys, feel free to give us an email direct. Any questions that you've got, as I say, I look forward to receiving them, and I hope you guys stay safe out there, and I hope you guys aren't sort of going too stir crazy. And anything you need, look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care.